Welcome to the Innovation in Higher Education podcast, where we share the diverse views and perspectives of experts in higher education, HR, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship from all around the world on topics related to the future of higher education and the future of work in an engaging, fresh, friendly, and very human format. Today's episode comes in partnership with Marije, the Master in Research and Innovation in Higher Education. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to the first episode in English of the Innovation in Higher Education podcast. My name is Viviana Rojas. I am the director of Digitalmente. Digitalmente is an innovation consulting organization conformed by higher education specialists focused on innovation in higher education and talent management. One of our main goals is actually to help higher education institutions to thrive in the 21st century and in a highly digital world. Following this line, I will be your host for today, and we will be talking about university digitalization in a post-pandemic world. Specifically, what are the opportunities for innovation in teaching and learning? For this, we have a super special guest with us today, and I am delighted to introduce Professor Dr. Frank Ziegele. Frank Ziegele is the executive director of the CHE, or CHE for Spanish speakers, the Center for Higher Education Gütersloh, a German think tank for higher education policy and management with 42 staff members. But not only that, Frank is also a professor for higher education and research management at the University of Applied Sciences, Osnabrück, where he has been my teacher, by the way. As an expert for higher education, he's an active consultant, researcher, training, and speaker all over the world, but with a focus in Europe. Frank also covers the full range of topics in higher education policy and management, and he is responsible for large-scale applied research projects, such as the European U Multi-Rank, which is pretty cool, by the way, but also for the practical implementation of reforms in the higher education sector. For instance, he also serves as a World Bank consultant in numerous countries. Hi, Frank. Again, it's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Viviana. So thanks for this very, very kind introduction.
Of course. There's a lot of love going on here. Okay, let's dive into the topic of today, university teaching and learning in a post-pandemic world. For this, I would like to begin with a broad question. How has COVID-19 impacted teaching and learning in universities from your perspective and your experience?
Yeah, well, when the pandemic came, I think for most universities in Europe and across the world, it was in terms of digitalization, it was like a bit jumping into cold water. Yeah, so we in my country, yeah, we had I think we had quite a couple of innovators, yeah, who already experimented with digital teaching and learning. But it wasn't a broad movement, yeah. So
wasn't the standard, let's say this.
Universities had no strategy, yeah. So it was just people moving forward, but it was not a cross-cutting thing. And so the pandemic came, and now suddenly everyone had to do it, yeah. And I think there was one first and very simple experience, and I think that is something that is still relevant today, and that's the experience. Okay, somehow it works. Yeah, so the fact that you cannot go to a classroom and that you interact with your students in a different way, somehow it works. I think there were two different things happening. On the one hand, some people were just transforming what they always did in a virtual context. Yeah, so they still do their lecture as they used to do for the last 20 years or so, yes. But now they just do it online. Yeah, and maybe that's not the best version of dealing with digitalization of teaching and learning, but that really exists, yeah. And then there was another part of the teachers, and they somehow realized, well, that gives us a kind of opportunity, yeah. So we can do something different. Maybe I think that's something that universities talk about across the world, is this idea of shift from teaching to learning.
Yes.
So put the focus on the student and do not just make presentations to them, but somehow to organize learning in a new way, which is more interactive and more participative. And some people realized that digital components in teaching and learning are a chance to move into that direction. Maybe we come to more examples about that, how that works, but just to start, there were these two different things. And maybe one more remark, what happened in this new digital world. We made for our country, for Germany, we did some empirical research.
Okay.
So we asked students, so what happened, how did you feel when you were exposed to this new way of learning? And I think there were a couple of effects. The first was the students said, we are rather happy. So it wasn't like, it's a disaster. They said it's more or less okay. They said we are not falling behind in our schedule. So universities managed to keep on teaching, and things didn't break down. That was the second. The third was there is a social issue. Sitting alone at home is, well,
I can tell you from experience, yes.
Yes, I can tell you, my daughter, my daughter started studying, and she received her lectures on Monday. She received 10 lectures, and someone said, watch them until the end of the week. And she didn't get to know any other student. And she dropped out of the program after one semester because it just didn't work. So what we learned is a university is a social place. It's not about only content that is hammered into your head, but it's a place of social interaction, and that is really an issue. And that is, if we think about the future, the question is, how can we organize these social interactions and combine them with digital components? And maybe the last effect is that I said students were rather happy, but students said the didactics for interaction are not so good. So the teachers were not very, professors were not very professional in organizing lively online discussion. But so that was one of the issues. Maybe that's a good starting point.
No, it's great. It's great. You have mentioned,
we go deeper into some of these things.
You have actually mentioned 3 points that I wanted already to go deeper in. You have mentioned the student experience, which is something I would like to cover. You have mentioned the teacher digital skills, which is something I would like to cover as well. And you have mentioned as well the quality of teaching and learning, how this shaped or reshaped the quality, how this impacted the quality. So I would like to start with the student experience, the student, not only learning experience, but in general, the student experience, okay? Because from my perspective, there are two kinds of experiences here. One is the learning experience, and the other is the social experience that you have mentioned, which is very, very important. And I think it's great that we are both talking here, because when the pandemic started, I was still a master's student at the Marije program, actually. We had even some lessons, and I can tell you, so we can actually contrast the student perspective with the teacher perspective, which I think is great. So regarding the student experience, what would you say was the highest and lowest regarding this impact of COVID-19?
Well, as I already said, the most problematic thing was the lack of contact. So, because if I may say that, so in our country, and it's the same in other countries, we before the pandemic, we used to have lectures where 500 people are sitting in a room and are listening to a guy who is somewhere down there in the lecture room. Yeah, and I would say we don't need that.
No.
Yeah, so if we do that online, I think it's the same experience. There's no difference. Yeah, but sitting together in a group with students, learning jointly, yeah, doing having a case study that you work on together. I think that's the kind of social experience which is relevant and which is not so easy to be implemented in an online context. And that's why I, for instance, this is if we already think about the future, if we think how we can do better, I'm an absolute fan of the flipped classroom or inverted classroom approach. So I would say the classroom, when you are together, it's not a place where someone should be lecturing. It's a place where you should discuss and work on a case study. And the whole lecturing could be moved to the online part. Yeah, so then maybe coming back to your question, what was a good experience? What was the high? So the good thing about it, I think there is one very practical thing which is an advantage if you have a classical lecture online. It's the fact that you can watch it again and again. Yeah, so the famous asynchronous way of teaching, I think this is something which was highly appreciated by the students. Yeah, so if you are lecturing, if you're just telling a story, you can do it online, you can do it in a classroom, but in a classroom you only do it once, and if you miss the message, it's over. If you have it online, yeah, you can watch it, you can repeat it. I think some universities even offered these online lectures with a field where students could have comments, and then we say somehow, I didn't understand that, and then another student says, this is what he meant, and so on. Yeah, so there is really an added value. So the high is having a good asynchronous way of presenting lectures. And the low is the lack of good interaction in the classroom. And the future is to keep the high and to get rid of the low. Yeah, so to keep the digital lecture maybe, and offer this opportunity to watch it repeatedly, but get rid of the low and go back to the classroom and do joint case studies work in the classroom, which, for instance, means interesting implication of that. I would say this means that universities have to rebuild their lecture rooms in a different way. Yeah, so in the future, do we still need lecture rooms where people are sitting in rows? Yeah, because that is related to the classical way of teaching. Or do we need lecture rooms where people are sitting around a round table? Yeah, and if we keep that in mind, we have new challenges. For instance, the cost challenge, that you have to reorganize your whole lecture rooms. Yeah? So you see, there are many implications of that. And I just one thing that comes to my mind about student experience. This is also related to this. I can watch things repeatedly. We asked teachers and students about their experience, and in most of the things they agreed. But there is one thing where they completely disagree.
Okay.
And this is what you call hybrid teaching.
Okay.
So with hybrid teaching, I mean there is a lecture going on in a classroom, and at the same time there is a transmission of that lecture to people sitting at home. Yeah, so having the digital and the on-site thing both together at the same time. And students love it and teachers hate it. So that's the general impression, and I understand why. Yeah, because
Why?
students can say, do I want to go to the classroom today, or do I want to stay at home? Both is possible. Yeah, teachers say, and that's an issue. I cannot guarantee the quality for both. Yeah, I only can take care of the group sitting in front of me, but at the same time taking care of the group that is out there in the digital environment. That's too challenging for me. And then I know that some are doing it then that two people are sitting there. Yeah, there is one taking care of the people at home or so. Yeah, but that's really a challenge where the experience of the two groups are completely different.
Okay, that's actually interesting. I wanted to then go back a bit to what you said at the beginning, that it wasn't such like that the experience itself, it was different regarding on the methodology used by the teacher in the digital way. So then it makes me think, then is it really a problem of the means, like is it really a problem of digitalization, or is it really a problem of methodology or teacher mindset in general? So we could be talking about, like, let's say the pandemic didn't happen. So the student that is sitting in this classroom with 500 other students with a teacher who gives a monologue will still fall asleep in a classroom than than at home alone in front of the computer, you know, like so even if the pandemic hasn't existed, this bad student experience would exist anyways. This is what, right?
Yeah. But if you fall asleep at home, it's not such a problem, because you can watch it again.
I have to admit, sometimes.
No,
Not in your class.
but I think you're absolutely right. I think maybe sometimes we are talking too much about digitalization. We should rather talk about how to organize teaching and learning. Yeah, and I would also say a good teacher in the classroom often is also a good teacher in the digital context. But still we, well, a digital context still requires training of teachers. Yeah, but a good teacher is open to training. I think that's the point. Yeah. So
I agree.
So what we saw at German universities, for instance, I think there were two things that have been done. The first, indeed, is training. So many universities created many courses and coaching. Yeah, so you could go to a certain person in this instructional designer or whatever in your university who helps you to conceptualize new approaches and so on. So that's training. The other thing that I think worked quite well in the pandemic is also peer learning. Yeah, so teachers sitting together, exchanging their experiences. I think maybe in the pandemic, I had the experience, I talked more to my colleagues in the university than I did ever before. Yeah, because we had to talk about it, and we had to rethink what we are doing. Yeah, and we also had to come to certain joint approaches. Yeah, so for instance, we were discussing, to give you a specific example of my, so I'm teaching in a program for higher education managers, in Germany, and I was sitting together with the colleagues, and jointly we conceptualized a format how to deal with learning videos. Yeah, and so we have a certain approach now. Yeah, we say, so we have in our university, we have a professional kind of television studio where we can produce these videos. And we came to a joint approach. We said a video should not be longer than 15 or 20 minutes. It should only cover one phenomenon that you explain or something like that. There's a certain standard, how it is organized. Yeah, so we were sitting together, and we were reflecting jointly about methodologies, and that's really great. Yeah, so that was really something that was pushed through the pandemic. But by the way, at the moment, if I think about, I don't know how it is in your country, for instance, if I look at my country, I was not talking very positively about everything, but I'm I'm an optimist. Yeah, you know that we work together. So, but there is also a bit of pessimistic Frank, and the pessimistic Frank observes that at the moment we are going back to old ways. Yeah, so now everyone says, pandemic is over finally. In fact, it's not, but yeah, so we have the feeling the pandemic is over, and why not teaching as we always did? Yeah, and I see many universities now where they're just going back to the classroom, and all the virtues of digital components are forgotten suddenly, and I have to say, I don't know which direction we will go in the end. Yeah, so is it really going back to old ways? Is maybe the gap between the innovators and the conservative guys is becoming bigger? Yeah, I don't know, but my fear is that we forget many of these lessons learned that we just talked about, and we shouldn't. I think that would really be a bad thing if we would do so.
I totally agree with you. In Peru, so I mean, I'm right now based in Germany, but I have a lot of contact with Peruvian universities and with Peruvian university managers, and there is a bit of both, and it depends a lot on so to begin with, it depends a lot on the nature of the university. For example, private universities are more, let's say, these are more flexible in a way, but public universities are a bit less flexible, not a bit, are less flexible in general. So, but of course, as well, the Peruvian context is a different one. We have a proliferance of private universities in comparison to public universities due to many different factors, political, socioeconomical. But I would like to go back to these problems that you were describing, because from my perspective, these are problems that need to be changed, right? In order for higher education to, be actually effective and something valued for students in the 21st century. Would you say this is a problem of mindset in general, then? Resistance to change? What would you attribute this reluctancy to continue the new ways of teaching that have been learned in the pandemic?
Yeah, that's very difficult to say. I think, well, change at a university is never an easy task. Yeah,
in any organization, but I would say in universities, it's especially challenging.
Well, these are institutions with a lot of tradition, and tradition is something good.
Culture is very strong. Yeah.
So we should continue with I think to a certain extent, I think I can. So if I think this, maybe say it that way, the pandemic, of course, for everyone also was a lot of stress. Yeah. So I, as a teacher, I spent many hours on top. I think we should understand that. Yeah, it was really a tough thing. So if you take it serious as a teacher, and you still want to provide good quality, so on top of the things that I do, I produce these learning videos, for example. And this is not, there is no reward for it. Okay. Nobody gives me any reward. The only reward is a happy student, which is of course a perfect reward. Yes. But many people are saying, so for instance, in Germany, we have a system where you have to teach a certain number of hours per week. But the calculation of this number of hours is mainly still based on on-site teaching. And I get no number of hours for producing a video. So many people say, well, that was such a lot of stress, and we are tired somehow. I think that's an issue. So my argument is, I think there is a good chance to motivate people to do the change if you support them. I think you cannot leave the teachers alone with these issues. But if you if you create a good incentive system, yeah, where the incentive is saying, if you are innovative, if you apply new teaching methods, you get a reward for it by whatever. It could be money, it could be recognition, or whatever. Yeah. So you, and what I said before, support structures. Yeah, I talked about this new job of the instructional designer. Yeah, so an instructional designer would be a person who works with a professor on the didactical concept of his teaching material. And I would be so happy if I had such a person, but they do not exist in my university. Yeah, and they do not exist.
That's actually interesting, because in my university in Peru, in the university I studied and the university I worked to, I was the innovation coordinator of the business school of my university. We had instructional designers in the innovation department. They were in the innovation department.
Yeah, we have other things. As I said, we have a perfect television studio. We have people supporting. Yeah, so we have certain units. Yeah, but this real idea that you have someone developing the material together with you, this is something I personally, I know 2 or 3 German universities which have that, and that's it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so change is not only a question of willingness of people or that they are lazy or whatever, but it's also a question of interaction between a motivated person and a good support structure. And I think this is really something we have to work on, this good support structure. And there are things where it's clear this is not the task of a professor. Yeah, coming back to my videos, I don't want to sit at home and cut my videos. Yeah, this is not my skill. This is not.
You learn some video editing skills.
Yeah, and so so I need someone to do that. And if I have if I had no one, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, so this is really about new staff categories, new kind of jobs at universities. Maybe we need more instructional designers and less professors. Yeah, maybe we have to change our employment structure to create better conditions for that. Yeah, and but I think there is something like change management. Yeah, I teach higher education management, so I teach about how to organize changes, and I think you can do a lot of things to make it happen. So here's the optimistic guy again.
True, I agree with you. We're talking about complete, we need, like, higher education in general. I think we need a complete restructuring of how it is conceived and how it is managed, right? And do you see that this is happening currently, or how do you see the situation now?
Yeah, it is. I think I said it in the beginning. I think there are two things. Yeah, there are these guys who say, let's go back and do it like we always did, but there is a substantial movement into a good direction, and I think there are, if you see how people are talking about the future, I think there is a kind of, I would say, common sense between many people that if it comes to teaching and learning, the future is blended.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is, the question is what it means. Yeah, there are many ways of being blended, but I think everyone who thinks in reasonable terms about the future would say we end up in something blended. And it's not, there is not a one size fits all blended mode. Yeah, to give you one example, my study program, my German, I have a German MBA program for higher education managers. So MBA program, that means these are people who are working. Yeah, so I don't address young students, I address experienced people who work in a certain job. Yeah, and you could immediately imagine that for these people, digital programs are fantastic. Yeah, because my students, they come from all kinds of places across Germany or the German-speaking countries. So for on-site teaching, they always have to come to my place, to my university, to Osnabrück, and they have to travel.
Yes.
So our program now, we changed it into 50% online and 50% on-site. Yeah, because they need some on-site for networking and community building, but they say we are happy with 50%,
Okay.
and the other part is being done online. So that helps us to cope with studying, family, and working at the same time. Yeah, so I would say for a program for older people already working, there is a higher percentage of online than for a program for young bachelor students. Yeah, because maybe in the beginning, coming into university for the first time, you might need more interaction on the ground with your fellow students. Yeah, so that's my argument. There's no one size fits all.
I agree.
So the future is blended, but the blend could be very different and very diverse.
And do you think speaking about the difference between countries and different cultures, do you think the culture of the country will affect this one size fits all thing that you're mentioning?
Yes, of course. Of course it will. I think what I learned, I don't, maybe I'm totally wrong, but what I learned in my international activities with countries across the world, just to give an example, there are some countries where students expect that when you get to know a professor, first of all, the professor has to give a lecture. Yes, so you cannot come as a professor and immediately say, let's go into case studies and discuss something. Yeah, they want to say, they want to see this is a great guy and he's able to give a great lecture. That's okay. I think Latin America is a part of the world where this is.
I noticed from the experience of studying with international students with like 20 different countries. I think we are not so traditional as I thought we were. We are pretty.
That's great.
Or maybe there's also like micro cultures between. For sure, there's micro cultures. I told you there's a difference between private and public, at least true. Because competition and the market forces you to be more flexible and change faster. But yeah, for example, I mean, I'm Peruvian. I don't consider myself to be a very traditional student.
But I think you made a very good point when you mentioned the micro cultures, because that's the other argument I wanted to make. Maybe the organizational culture even has a stronger impact on that. I give you the example that everyone knows in Europe. When you would ask a person in Europe about where is the university where people do a problem-based learning, yeah, then everyone would immediately say, that's the university in Maastricht in the Netherlands. Yeah, so this university is well known across the whole of Europe, that everything that happens in that university is problem-based learning.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a very strong organizational culture.
Yes.
Yeah, so all the professors have that in their DNA. Yeah, teaching, learning has to be problem-based, and so that means now moving to more digital components has to be in line with that idea. Yeah, so that it should fit with the idea of doing your teaching in a problem-based way. And that's stronger than any regional culture. Yeah, so I would say the strongest impact on that, if you talk about culture, is organizational strategy, organizational joint understanding what we believe to be good teaching and learning.
Yes.
And there are countries that now we come again to regions. I think my country, I would say, is lagging behind in terms of developing joint ideas. What is good teaching and learning? In my country, there is still a bit of the culture as a teacher. In the end, in the classroom, you are alone, and you can do whatever you want. Yeah, yes. So you develop your own ideas. What is good teaching and learning? And this is a criticism that I have about many German universities. It's also about to change now. So I know some universities who are doing better at that, but I think a university to push a kind of culture, university has to force its professors to sit together and to talk jointly about what do we believe to be good teaching and learning, and what do we not want to do in our university. And I think that's a very strong influence. If you do that in a good way, I think you can move forward in an excellent way.
What you just mentioned also brings me back to, like, this is a matter of change management, talent management as well, which is a topic we will be covering next. But I would say I think this forces as well universities to rethink the way they recruit professors, right? Like, now they have to think about some skills that professors should have, some mindsets that professors should have in order to actually ensure a good learning experience in a digital world and all this stuff. Hi, I am Viviana. I come to let you know that was the end of the first part of the interview, where we were discussing the opportunities for university teaching and learning after the big changes caused by COVID-19. From now on, we will discuss the opportunities for talent management, which you will be able to hear in our next episode. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss any of our content. Cheers!